So this is where we will stop with this course. I imagine this course being alive and not a finished thing. I will listen to you, answer your questions, and gladly expand on some of the subjects and include them into the lessons, free of charge, of course, if I think it makes sense and that I missed something. However, I cannot pack everything into one course, and it makes sense for you not to have everything in one course. You should let it all sink in, and for everything we learned, you should try to use the methods you learned to test some of your ideas. And if you have an idea and you can create it completely, but you're missing one or two pieces of the puzzle, I will gladly help you. So whenever I learned to use a software from a book, I would read the entire book and then vaguely remembered what I read, but I had an idea of what is possible. So later I would try to work on a project, and I kept remembering that something that I need is possible, and I knew where to find it in the book. I hope you can get that same experience from this course. You probably have an idea of what you could do with what we learned so far, and you should try to work on a project. And whenever you remember you can use something, you go back to the video lesson and then remember how. So on that note, let's remember what we learned in this course. In the first section, I told you a little bit about the course and what software to use, how to prepare yourself. In the second section, I showed you how to install your software, how to eventually create your first Hello World plugin that does nothing but works. This involved explanations on how to build your projects, different options of doing it, how to install your plugin and let others install it. I tried to explain the basic file structure of your Visual Studio project so that you understand what is what. Even if you do not have to know what most of those files actually do. In order to not give you a single fish, but teach you how to fish, I showed you how to use the online Rhino SDK help file to find the classes and methods that you need, and then we actually created our own first command. I explained the notion of the document view architecture and how Rhino document works, and at the end of that section I gave you a short introduction of how to create your own toolbars. I personally never do that because I like dialogues and command prompts, but many people like to work with toolbars and icons, so I wanted to show you how easy it is for you to create those on your own, because Rhino has inbuilt tools for creating your own menus and toolbars. So we went on to the third section where I concentrated on reading geometry. The principle of actually selecting the geometry is almost the same for any type of object, but I separated the lessons based on the different types of objects so that I can explain some basic characteristics of which one of them. And I showed you some basic debugging tools, how to write lines in command prompt, select points, curves, brep, meshes, explain some geometrical properties those different classes have. I explained the difference between a class that holds an actual Rhino object that exists in the document and the one that only holds the geometrical information. And at the end of the section, I expanded a bit on lists and arrays, as they are a very important part of CAD programming. After we learned how to select different types of standard objects, we moved on to the fourth section where I wanted to show you how to create geometry and add objects to your Rhino document. I first talked about how to create your own functions so that you can create your own library and you can reuse those methods whenever you want. We then went on to create points, curves, lines, polylines, arcs, circles. I showed you how to generate random numbers. We went on to create more complex objects like breps, surfaces and polysurfaces, how to join them, how to create meshes from scratch in code, or how to create them by meshing surfaces and polysurfaces, how to manipulate existing objects like deleting them from the document or replacing them. And I finished the section with some basic debugging methods. Covering geometrical objects in Rhino is not all, of course, and in the fifth section we actually talked about different types of objects like annotation objects, text dots, how to automatically create dimensions. I told you what garbage collection is and how relieved you should feel when working in a managed language. Then we talked about transformations, how to rotate, scale, translate your objects. And a very important part was creating your own classes and class methods, getting much more control over your plugin. And we ended the section by learning how to automatically create layers and how to overload our functions. Of course, if you're creating a plugin, you usually want someone to use it fairly easily. So in the sixth section we talked about user interface, how to make your command have those standard command line options, how to create a form or a dialog, what's the difference between a model one and a modelless one, how to create both of them, how to add some buttons and different components to your forms, and how to control them. And we created a nice parametric panelization example where all of this was demonstrated. And this brings us to the seventh section here where I just remembered what we went through. And as I mentioned, I'm sure that there will be some additional stuff that you will want me to explain, and some of them will be added to this section. That's why I call it conclusion and addendums. You will be notified about it, and they will be free of charge, of course, for people that already bought the course. I want to thank you for going on this journey with me. I hope it was exciting for you, and I hope that you realize the potential of programming and automation, not only in the building industry, but in general. We are living in exciting times. We can automate so much and make machines do a lot more for us than we ever could. And we are on the way of making artificial intelligence algorithms better and better. Virtual reality is in our homes. All those spheres need you and your programming skills so that you can make our lives easier and more enjoyable. With this level 1 course, you made the first step, but the most important one. It gets easier from here, and there is a lot more to learn and create. So what are you waiting for? Get to work.